Hello, it's Ryan. It's 12:35 Monday, March 23rd Eastern Time. I hope you're doing well. This is a little bit of a different video, a little bit of a different topic from me. If you have paid any attention to me, which you shouldn't, you've probably heard me talk a lot about the last 7 or 8 years about business and strategy and communications, leading teams, all that kind of stuff. But I used to be a pretty decent designer and developer. Yes, I could code. And a topic that I keep seeing on my feeds and a particular question that has been around for a while asked by Hang, I haven't really seen a good answer for. And when Hang asked about it again 3 weeks ago, I went off and did some side work. Creatively, I like to make and build and design products and tools for myself and test out theories and whatnot. Sorry for that. And so there's this question that Hang has been asking for a long time for clarity, that when talking about vibe coding or design systems in particular, is there evidence of teams? Do they have an approach? Can they show real stuff of taking an existing design system, one that had already exists, and being able to create that or turn that into something that then other people on the team are able to vibe code consistently, leveraging it? It's basically like, how do we take the existing thing that's already there and make it AI ready in this new environment? And so that's something that I was playing around with a couple of weeks ago. And then when Google released Stitch or the update to Stitch last week, and they shared that design markdown file, I want to say, I should probably share this with you. So Hang, this is probably for you, but it's for TJ, it's for others, is how I think about it is MCPs are great. They're wonderful. They're wonderful to dig in and find the data, the roots, all that kind of stuff, and sort of bring out what is the source of truth. But on a day-to-day basis, when we think about things like design systems inside of companies, they are tools of scale. And the majority of use of a design system is not to create and update the system itself, but it's for people to be able to leverage what's already there, to put these components, this guidance into place that doesn't really change a lot. Design system shouldn't be changing every day. So there's that. And one approach that I've been thinking about for a while since Claude or Anthropic released Claude Skills is like, I think there's an approach here that actually leverages that same type of structure, but in more depth. I think also a lot of the conversation around design systems is actually UI frameworks, not actually a design system. So here's an existing design system that my team made 11 years ago. It's all based in SAS, it's tokens, it's early on, it's all based on Gina Bolton's work. But this is a UI framework. A UI framework sort of defines the structure of, say, a box or a base. It defines how it should show up in the different sizes. But a design system, for a design system, you need to include things like principles, governing standards around motion. It defines, it extends that UI framework and doesn't just say, this is how to make it or what it is. It really talks about when it should be used. What are the right conditions to use a button versus a radio? When using a button, what are the right conditions to use this type of button versus another type of button? And I think that's the thing within design systems that has always been difficult to get adopted, to be applied, say beyond a UI framework. And so a couple of weeks ago, I took this question that Hang has, and I wanted to see if I could take a UI framework that I already had built in SAS, so kind of like what Hang was mentioning, like this thing already exists, to borrow some of this fluent principles and color principles, all this stuff that is defined in the Fluent Design System from Microsoft. So to take the UI framework that I had in SAS to incorporate all this guidance that comes with a fully developed design system and see if I can make a local version of that, to take what already exists, make a local version of that as a Claude skill itself. So the first thing that I did, Hang, maybe I'm talking to you, is I worked with Claude to take this whole system that was already there, to review it, to understand it, and create initially just some components with Markdown. I told Claude I want to turn this into a skill. So we started from there, building that out, and eventually turned it into a full skill. I also asked Claude to review what was on the Fluent website and take into consideration these broader sort of things. And the result is, after a couple hours of turning or transforming what is generally a UI framework in code and whatnot into a series of mostly Markdown files that define how an AI model should follow this governance and instruction. And so we have here a Claude instruction, a skill. We have, yes, some tokens that were created, but we also have things like this governance that might come with a design system. This is here how an app shell should work. This is how empty states should work. This, when talking about color usage, this is what we should be considering and thinking about when talking about color. But also down to, this is what the alerts component looks like in SAS, and now this is what the alerts component looks like in Markdown for the Claude skill. So that was test number one, Hang, if you will, of me taking an existing system, seeing if I could not make it AI ready. Because what I want to be able to do, my hypothesis is that companies want people to use AI. They still want designers and others to be experimenting and testing and playing in new ways. But generally speaking, we are struggling to get to a place where, as you mentioned, Hang, and you've mentioned this many times, can we get to a place where the models aren't hallucinating, aren't making something up, aren't making it hard to get to production? And so my general hypothesis, I think there is a path to vibe coding and still allowing people to use something like Figma, be in the canvas that they want, where the model is not going to screw it up. And my little attempt here is through a very extended, larger Claude skill, a set of directions that defines the blueprints, but it's essentially a routing skill that defines and tells the model when to go where and whatnot. And so I ran an experiment a couple weeks ago, and every once in a while kind of updated. What I wanted to see first was, could I build this same document file or site that is defined entirely based on the Claude skill? Could I vibe code the same document site that is instead, going the old way, that is instead routed and defined by the Claude skill? And guess what? Yes, I was able to do that. I should mention this UI framework is not the most elegant. It's not the cleverest out there, but it is what it is. And I just wanted to see that Claude would be able to render and adhere the same thing. But also that if creating the same thing in Figma, that we could think about creating some type of Figma connection. And I know we have MCP. I prototyped a Figma plugin, creating a Figma plugin, so that essentially Claude would be rendering or creating a JSON file that both Figma could understand, and also when vibe coding, Claude could understand to make the HTML version. And made really good progress. So prompted, I want to create an admin dashboard. We got this. Here's the HTML version. It is responsive. It is all leveraging what is in that Claude skill. You see we have active states. It's all hoverable. And if we go into Figma, guess what? Created the same thing, shows those responsive layouts. It's all rendering it the same way. So I was like, okay, that's making some progress. And I worked with Claude here and there to sort of tweak some things. I said, oh, let's create a Shopify clone. You can see, again, not elegant as a design system, but this is how it is defined right now. And so it is defining things and creating things to the rules of what are already there. So if we were just going to make a better design system, we would update what is in the rules itself. And you can see over in Figma, we have that too. So what I wanted to show you and maybe experiment with is I'm just going to go to Cowork, and I know I'm not in code, but let's just use Cowork for this sake. And I'm going to see if we can vibe code something in real life so you can kind of see how it might work. Let's go ahead. Hey, I would like to make a internal communications application. This is an app that internal teams would use to talk to each other about projects, maybe share files. They probably have some channels in which they discuss things more openly, but can also create some private channels or maybe some groups that are specific to project work. I think it would be great if this app has a feed, and maybe also great if people internally can RSVP to, inside events or, knowledge discussions. Great. Let's go. So behind the scenes, and for others, what should be happening is, because I've given access to this folder, again, I'd probably use code in this case, but I've given access to this folder with Cowork, and there's a Claude skill in there that should be telling the model, go make this prototype. Go create a version in HTML, and then give me a JSON file for right now to use in Figma as the plugin. I didn't want to create a plugin that was fully hooked up to APIs and all that kind of stuff. So interesting. It's asking me just a couple of clarifying questions. What should be the default view? Sure, the activity feed. What kind of company? I'm a software startup. How prominent should be events? Let's create a dedicated section for it. So it's just asking for a little clarity on what we want with this application and this product. It's maybe getting me to be a better at prompting. Of course, it's telling me great choices. And now it should be behind the scenes, as you can see on the right-hand side, going through all these files in here. So I'm going to pull this up and sort of show you is that here is the, that's the design system as it's rendered as a Claude skill right here. It should be going through that. It should also be looking at how it should be rendering this with HTML. And it should also be looking at these files to sort of say, this is what's needed to create a JSON file that goes into Figma that then generates the different renderings. Should be creating a projects folder as well, because that was the instructions that I gave Claude to do. So you can see it's created that internal comms folder. No files in there yet. It's working through it. So first, it's going to design or create the design JSON file. So let me just kind of show you what we're going to do here. Is I've created a prototype plugin where, rather than pulling from the API, rather than doing all that backend setup, I just want to grab the JSON markup that is essentially the source of truth that both Figma will use and the HTML, that Claude will use to build out the app itself. So JSON is just a structure that is quite familiar and used inside of lots of applications. And Figma, if you create a plugin, can also read it too and it basically tells the rules of what should be done. And so this plugin is my sort of way of skipping having to go and build out full APIs kind of stuff. I just want to do this locally. It's a local test to see how it will go. So still building this out. So it says now it has the JSON file. That's great. It should be all here. Yeah, so I'm just going to copy all this. I'm going to skip ahead. I'm going to put this into Figma. Let's see what happens. It's going to render this on a canvas. And you can see, you're probably like, this is ugly. Yeah, well, the ugliness is because our UI component library is super basic, and it in itself is not elegant, as I mentioned. But you can see it rendered it at the 1440, it rendered it at 768, it rendered it at 375. So it's showing you how this design system defined by inside of a Claude Skill as markdown files should be laid out. It's giving all of the variables, rendering all that kind of stuff. And so what we have here is kind of looks like Slack. There's an activity feed. And then on the sidebar, it's showing us, oh, look, those events. What should be happening behind the scenes, let's check in on Claude, is it going to produce the same result in HTML? Probably should. I've tested this a couple times, but we'll see. In the meantime, this is me talking to you and others, and maybe Hang is like, this is how I would approach it, is the source of truth is what's in production right now. You can use these models to look at the current stacks and determine what essentially is the UI framework right now that's in production. You can work with one of these models, in this case I'm using Claude, to convert that into a format and structure that these models are better at understanding. And then if you want to begin to make changes to that, you now have a markup language that is both easily read by humans and by these models. From there, you can then get to a point where if somebody is working in Figma, they can pull the components that are defined here, that are rendered here. You can even, render specific sort of things. You can do all the Figma things that you want to do. So when they're building it out, they have these resources available to them directly in the Figma file. And it will also then ensure that their vibe coding, that they use this same reference, and now it's going to spit out an HTML version of that. Let's see what happens. Let's allow this, and looky there. It's the same thing. You'll also notice, like, not everything has the hovers and whatnot. That's okay. That probably hasn't been defined in the design system in the markdown itself, but is it responsive? Yeah. Does it break down and do the same things? And so Hang and others, I'm not internal, and I know I'm maybe not the domain expert here, but that's how I would go about thinking about it. And I haven't seen it thought about in that way. And roast me in the comments if others have done it this way. I just haven't been paying attention. But that's my little experiment. That's how I'd go about thinking about it. So I'm curious what you think.